Is this the week the Cowboys offense finally breaks out? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we are breaking down this Lions-Cowboys Week 6 matchup, which will occur 4:25 Eastern Time on Fox. Landon, we're going to talk about the offense and whether or not this can be a breakout game. But big picture, what does this game mean for the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, I think it's a very important game. I mean, in the sense that this is an NFC contender that they're playing. I think, no matter how you look at this, whether it's standings or just how the team will feel about itself, winning this game would be enormous, and the kind of confidence boost that the teams can get, especially going into a bye with that kind of vibe. I think it would definitely be a huge boost to this team. If they lose, it certainly isn't the end of the world, but it's an NFC, a contender that you're losing to, which it will affect tiebreakers. And, you need that in what is a very competitive NFC East to continue to keep your playoff hopes alive, even if you can't come back and win the East.
And wild card, right? Like
that's what I was referring to.
We look at it right now, like Minnesota's 5-0. Now, maybe they fall off a little bit, but there is a chance that maybe the Cowboys and Lions are fighting for a wild card spot against one another.
And even if the Lions aren't fighting for just the conference record being such a high up tiebreaker for the wild card, it's important that the Cowboys win as many of these NFC games as possible, even if they aren't inside the division, just for tiebreaker reasons. So, I mean, we talk about paths to getting to the playoffs. I mean, obviously the best and cleanest one is to win your division, but that's not always possible. So, you have to set yourself up to, if it comes down to it, win those tiebreakers at the end of the season as well. And beating the Lions would go a long way.
And I think from a national perspective, if the Cowboys lose this game, you lose a game against a good team without Micah Parsons, without DeMarcus Lawrence, without Marshawn Kneeland. I think people, I don't want to say excuse it because that's not really the right word, but I think people will understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you win this game without those guys, and now you're 4-2, and you've won 3 straight games going into the bye week, you and I were talking pre-show, the Cowboys would have a chance to have the second best record in the NFC if the Commanders would lose to the Ravens in Baltimore. If we're going into the bye week at 4-2 with several of your top players missing a good chunk of time in the first month and a half of the season, Lynn, I think you would feel pretty darn good about where the Cowboys go or stand kind of going into late October.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, the like I said, the confidence boost aspect of it, I'm sure the teams, the fans will, be fully invested at that point, getting a week to kind of, revel in the recent success of the Cowboys. But I mean, I think it's important that we don't take this too seriously one way or the other, right? Like if we win it, it certainly doesn't mean that you're the cream of the crop in the NFC yet, but if you lose it, it certainly doesn't mean that you're out of the race either. So I do agree that I think, as it looks on paper right now, it doesn't look like a Cowboys win from just based on the injuries and all the other kind of stuff around it. So I think that if the Cowboys were able to pull it out, even though it's a home game, it would be a surprise and a confidence booster for a team that is kind of, going week. It's really a week-to-week team, it feels like.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Cowboys offense. We've been waiting on the game where it's an offensive explosion, right? We had several of them last year where they scored 30 points, 40 points. I don't remember if it was last year they had a 50-point game. I know they did the year before, but is this the week we finally see the offense kind of break out and take over?
It needs to be. I mean, I think if the Cowboys are going to win, I think that they have to find a way to make this a track meet. You know, I don't think that's the only path to victory for this team, but I do think that getting Detroit out of a neutral game script and forcing, you know, a passing game, I think is your best chance to kind of go toe to toe with this offense, especially with the way that your defense is right now. So I think that the Cowboys need to find a way to kind of clean up the mistakes that they had last week. You know, the good news is that the mistakes last week well, not this is good news, but they seem to be isolated to kind of the red zone mostly. You know, I mean, there's certainly other aspects that need to be cleaned up, but I think that's just kind of, again, the progression of going through the season. If they can clean things up in the red zone and just be a little bit more efficient, a little bit smarter, they moved the ball well against a very good Steelers defense up and down the field between the 20s in this last game. So it feels like they were kind of, you know, stretching their legs. This offense was starting to round into form a little bit last week. It wasn't quite all the way there, as we saw once they got in the red zone, but I think that they're kind of on their way. And look, as good as this Detroit team is, I think they have maybe a better interior to defensive linemen. I don't know that they have the coverage guys to kind of continually keep up with CeeDee Lamb, you know, and we'll see how that works out with them. I think that's the way that you have to attack them, is that you need to find a way to be aggressive early, try to get CeeDee Lamb going early, and start, you know, putting the pedal to the metal, and let's put a lot of points on the board, because I think that's the game plan in which, you know, that puts Jared Goff at a lot of pressure to keep up with points and Dak Prescott. And I think this is a good offense with a good offensive coordinator, but I'll take my chances with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb versus their offensive squad.
Yeah, we saw a game, was it now, like 2 weeks ago? It would be Detroit's last game they played on Monday night against Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle drove the ball up and down the field. Kenneth Walker had 3 touchdowns in that game. Like, they moved the ball with ease. Now, I think the Cowboys' offensive line is better than what Seattle's is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the weapons that Seattle has, but obviously I think Dak is a better quarterback than Geno. So I would think this would be a game where the offense should be able to move the ball. They should be able to score the red zone. But the biggest thing for me is, how do you start in this game? Last week, Landon, the Cowboys got the ball, first possession of the game, went down and got a field goal. You're not going to be able to kick field goals against Detroit, but at least they went down and got points to take an early lead. You're going to have to do the same thing this week. Like, I think they need to score conservatively 17 points at least in the first half if they want to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I you know, my general kind of North Star for what I think they should be trying to score is 28 points in the game total. So
I'm even thinking higher than that. I'm thinking like 31.
Yeah. Oh, I think, for sure. Like, I mean, that the more the better, I think, for the Cowboys, like, in that sense.
But you get where we're going. Like, we're thinking you're going to need to, you can't win this game 23-20. At least we don't think so.
Well, I think the more specific thing is that you can't allow their offense to beat up on what is a partially exposed defense of the Dallas Cowboys, right? Yeah. With the defensive line injuries that they've got, if you continue, the longer you stay in a neutral game script for Detroit and allow them to continue to run the football as part, then they can add in play action, then they can expose you. We'll talk about that on the next segment, but this is all to say that the Cowboys offense has got to help the defense by scoring points and thereby making the Detroit offense one-dimensional, because I just don't know that the Cowboys defense is going to be able to do that on their own.
They have to take some of the pressure off the defense, right? No. Like, we know the Lions are going to score points in this game, but what we want to see from the defense, and again, we'll talk about this in a second, is just get a few stops here and there, create a turnover, create some positive field position. Like, we know the Lions they're a very, very good offense with a very good offensive line. They're healthy at all skill players. They're coming off a bye week. This should be the best version of the Lions we see on offense. You just need to get a couple stops. And if the offense can put pressure on Detroit to feel like they have to score every drive, then maybe the defense will be okay. Maybe.
Yeah. And again, like, Detroit's coming off a bye. That's usually obviously a very good thing for their health and everything. But it also can mean sometimes that maybe they're coming out a little bit rusty. And if they are, you got to find ways to take advantage of that. Get them off the field. If you're going to get some opportunities to get some 3-and-outs early in this game while Detroit's still kind of, shaking the rust off of the bye week, take advantage of that, get a turnover, like try to score points early to set yourself up so that you dictate the terms of the game and you're not leaving your defense to just be ground to a pulp by this Detroit offensive line.
All right, let's talk about this Cowboys defense that'll be shorthanded again this week. Can they get any stops against Jared Goff and the Lions? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get rates and perks usually reserved for only the high society. But now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5 APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for product-specific disclosures. Visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the absolute best way to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can win, again, up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Go download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are breaking down this Lions-Cowboys matchup in Week 6. Lena, let's switch our attention to the defense. How do they get stops in this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is the side of the ball where you feel like the greatest disadvantage exists because of the injuries created. I think, like we said in the first segment, they're going to need some help from the offense, right? They're going to need to kind of change the environment that this Detroit offense is operating in by, putting pressure on them to score points. I just feel like, I think that Golson and Lawson and Nealon, while he was playing last week, I think that they did an admirable job, right? Of Wheat as well, just did an admirable job of playing to their strengths and then trying to get the Steelers into situations where they had to throw the ball, and then that's where the Steelers kind of struggled, and that's how the Cowboys were able to kind of consistently get the Steelers off the field, right? Yes, they were obviously shorthanded. They didn't have the pass rush that they normally did, but the Cowboys were able to play well enough with the players they had on early downs to stop the run. And then once it got into a passing situation, they did what they needed to do schematically to create pressure on Justin Fields. They have to do that against the Goff again, and it's going to be more difficult because this is a better running game. It's a better offensive line. Mm-hmm. The mismatch personnel wise between the Steelers offensive line fully healthy versus the Cowboys defensive line injured the way it is enormous. There's no, making small of it.
Well, I also say I think the field conditions helped a little bit last week. Like I think the Cowboys could muck it up a little bit. It's not going to be the case here. Like I think you're going to see Detroit's offensive line use a lot of wide zone, and it's a little bit harder to defend.
So we're going to see exactly how they figure out, that's line one is how do you win on early downs in order
Yeah.
to, prevent big gains in the run game, and then get Jared Goff into situations where you can find a way to pressure him. Because if you get Jared Goff in play action situations or situations where he's not feeling any pressure, you're going to get what you got last week, right? Where he went literally perfect. I think he was 18 for 18. He's one of the best. And we've talked about this. He's one of the best, like flag football type 7-on-7 quarterbacks that you're going to see. Like if you don't pressure him, if you give him wide open looks, he's not going to miss throws.
No.
So you have to hit him. You've got to force his eyes down. You've got to pressure him. He doesn't throw the ball well under pressure. That's always been the book on Jared Goff.
Yep.
But Detroit has avoided that by having an incredible offensive line that doesn't get pressures a lot. Ben Johnson has done a really great job of like setting up not only protections, but also schemes that give guys, a lot of open space, running wide open, easy looks for Goff. So they've taken what was a limited quarterback, at the Rams at the time, and basically accentuated all that he does well. And when he's provided the opportunity to get play action, to use play action, to have protection, he will shred this defense, even with Bland and our starting corners out there. So the Cowboys have got to find a way to get into situations where they can send pressure at Jared Goff. And then if they can, get some errant throws from the pressure that they're causing on him, that's when you hope, hey, Bland, Diggs, these guys can take advantage of errant throws that are, being made under duress. Maybe you get an interception, a pick six or something, great like that, turn the shape of this game around. But if you allow this offense to kind of do what they want, to play the game script they want, I mean, it could very well turn into a New Orleans Saints type game, right?
Sure.
Where they're just going to run the ball until you make them not run the ball. And that would be obviously disastrous for a Cowboys team that's as beat up as it is.
Just a couple other notes. Like if you're comparing this to like the Saints game, the Saints usually throw the ball down the field a little bit more than what the Lions do. What Jared Goff, at least under Ben Johnson, is like to do is just kind of pepper the middle of the field and be really efficient and let their guys make plays after the catch. And that's where the secondary and the linebackers, they've got to be great at limiting Yak, because this offense is all based off it, right? Sam Laporta, one of the best Yak tight ends in the league.
He's the one I'm the most nervous about,
right,
to be honest.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs in the receiving game, right? Like they're going to get their completions. They're going to get out in space, but make tackles. Don't allow an 8-yard gain to turn into a 35-yard game. Like that's key. The other thing I wanted to mention for the defensive line, like there have been many times where teams have played the Lions and they can't get pressure with their front four because Detroit's got a really good offensive line. Yeah. That doesn't mean that you can't have an impact. I've seen there has been a couple of games, and I think they were last year, where a lot of times these defensive linemen, if they don't win early, they'll kind of stay back and they'll try to get in the passing windows and knock down passes, right? Knocking down a pass is just as good as getting a pressure and having them throw it away, right? So with Goff wanting to attack the middle of the field, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to get your hands on footballs. And you never know, like some of those times you tip a ball up in the air and it gets picked off. I'm hoping we see the Cowboys have a little bit more active hands on the defensive line. That's how you can make an impact without getting to the quarterback.
Yeah. And also I think, you like you were saying, you don't even necessarily have to get to the quarterback to affect Goff too. Cause look, Goff is a pocket passer in the truly classic way. Right. But unlike a lot of these other pocket passers, and again, this is kind of why Detroit was able to get him, the way they did, is that, another one of his flaws is that he doesn't necessarily navigate the pocket well either.
No,
it's not like he's like Tom Brady, where he's working incredibly well in confined spaces. He doesn't like that either. He likes a very clean pocket, and from a very clean pocket, he's incredibly efficient. But like you were saying, even if they can't win their one-on-ones, if you could push a center back into his lap a little bit, or just make his feet kind of uneven as he's throwing the ball, he will throw an errant football, so it's when he is able to step on his back foot and release the ball on the third step, or get a little bit extra look because of a play action, that's when he's just really, really hard to beat because he's very accurate. He'll put the ball where it needs to be, and then his receivers will take those very accurate passes and be able to run with it and create yak, and that's how they produce big yardage in the passing game.
The other thing I wanted to mention before we move on is Ben Johnson always has a couple tricks up his sleeve, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be either like a double reverse or a double pass. I mean, that they're going to have some tricks. We saw it in the 2-point conversion last year with the ineligible guy reporting. I'm positive they're going to probably run that play, the very first play of the game, right? Like, and it's going to be so loud that 68 reporting, or whoever it is, or 70. Just play disciplined football, sound football. Don't give them easy scores. It's going to be hard enough to stop them. Don't allow them to have big plays. Don't commit dumb penalties like we saw last week where Dallas had 2 personal foul penalties last week, right?
3, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it was 3 personal fouls.
They're a good offense. You don't need to give them free yardage, right? If they can avoid that stuff, they'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing is that they're going to be emotional. Like the way that the Cowboys have won these last few games has pissed off Detroit fans, and they're very upset about it. And honestly, you can use that to your advantage a little bit if the Cowboys can kind of just stay steady. They're going to be emotional. They're going to be hot. And maybe that means they come out a little bit hot, but that also can cause them to make mistakes. And normally it's the Cowboys who are making these mistakes. If they can just focus on execution and just keep it all in front of them and survive that initial, emotional burst that you're going to get from these guys, maybe you could find a way to kind of get this path back to where you want it to be.
Keep yourself into the game.
That's right. Keep yourself in the game, dictate the terms of the pathway. And then, hopefully get this to a situation where it's a close game at the end of in the fourth quarter. And if it is that situation, if you are able to do that, I think you've evened out the odds. And now suddenly the odds are in your favor because I think you have the better quarterback. And I think that's, you need to get to the situation where having the better quarterback makes the biggest difference.
All right, let's make our predictions for week 6. We'll do that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You could bet on this Lions-Cowboy game. The Cowboys are currently 3.5-point underdogs at home to the Lions. So if you think the Cowboys are going to pull off the win, go bet on the money line. You'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose, that you can go use on divisional bets, other week 6 games, including the Sunday night football game between the Bengals and the Giants. We've got a great slate of action this week. Go check out all of the lines over on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. You can download that show wherever you get your podcast and over on YouTube. All right, Landon, prediction time, week 6. Who do you got?
This is a really tough game for the Cowboys. All the elements, the environment. I mean, even though they're playing at home, the Cowboys have not played very well at home so far this year, which has obviously been a big change since what we experienced last year. I think that, when you look at the injury report, it tells a tale, and the advantage, the natural advantage that the Detroit Lions already have on most teams in the NFL with their offensive line will be pressed even further by the fact that your best defensive linemen are all missing. Not even just your 2 best, but your third backup and your fourth backup, technically, if you want to go back to training camp in the beginning of this whole thing. So the Cowboys are definitely going to be shorthanded. They have got to find a way to use these guys as run defenders, and Carl Lawson and Wheat have got to play like some of the best run defense that they're going to play. You're going to need another game from Golson like you had last week, where he's stout against the run. but it's a very tall task because you're not playing a reshuffled Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. You're playing the best offensive line probably in football. So I'm going to pick Detroit to win just because I think right now they've got to. Well, first of all, I'm going to pick Detroit to win because I picked the Steelers to win last week and the Cowboys
there you
won.
go.
So
Continue on.
we're going to continue that trend.
I've been doing it for 7 years.
You've been doing
now.
it for years. But also, I mean, look, it's a difficult game. I think that it's the Lions, because of their health, because they're coming off by the health advantage more than anything. I think that they're going to have more paths to victory, right? If the Cowboys don't find a way to make this Detroit Lions offense one-dimensional, this game could get really ugly, very quickly. So I don't believe it will. I think it will be a closer game. The question becomes, can the Cowboys defense do enough to give the Cowboys offense the ball often enough to kind of keep this game in hand? I think that I'm going to pick Detroit because the Cowboys will just fall barely short of what they need to. I think I'm going to pick it 28-24 Lions.
Yeah, I think you're going to know how this game is going to go in the first quarter, right? Like if it's a 7-7 game after the first quarter, I feel pretty confident that it's going to be close going into the last 7 minutes. But I could also see a scenario that's played out a couple of times this year where the Cowboys start with the ball, go 3 and out, Detroit gets a touchdown, and all of a sudden now you're fighting uphill the rest of the game. And that's a terrible spot to be in when you just don't have a lot of defensive linemen. But I will say, I've been predicting it for a while, there is going to be a game coming up where Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb just go nuclear and they win a game, right? A game that they probably shouldn't have won because they're just so much better than the opposing offense. I think this isn't a bad week for that to happen. You're at home against a rookie corner in Terrion Arnold, who I believe has been called for 8 penalties already this year. Carlton Davis is somebody that CeeDee Lamb has torched in the past.
Yep.
So this is not a secondary that should concern CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert all that much.
Kirby Joseph may not be playing. We'll see how that. So that another strike against their secondary.
Yep. I will say there is a big rest disadvantage here. We mentioned that Detroit's coming off by the Cowboys. The final play of that game on Sunday night wasn't until 1 a.m. Eastern time. I can't imagine Dallas got home until the wee hours and Monday morning, probably.
I think it was 6 a.m. is what the time they said they landed.
So you're basically operating on like 6 days rest versus 13. They played on Monday night, 13, right? I wouldn't be surprised if that plays a big part in this. But Dallas already doesn't have depth in the defensive line. That might become a factor late in this game.
Yeah. I think that's a smart thought. Is this not even just the starters that you have to worry about? It's who's relieving them, who's coming in and how often can they do that? So all of these guys, none of these guys, I should say, are used to playing the amount of snaps that they're likely going to play on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm picking the Lions to win. But again, if Dallas were able to win this game and pull off another upset, right, there'd be back-to-back weeks that they were underdogs and won. I think you and I are having a very different conversation about this Cowboys team after a really rough start in September. If you're 4-2, beating the Lions and beating the Steelers going into your bye, I think you got to feel pretty good about this team.
Yeah, I think. I would have to imagine what the shape of a Cowboys win this week would look like, but I think you would call that very gutty, right?
Yeah.
Like to be underdogs to back-to-back weeks, to deal with the injuries that you have, including missing maybe your best player. If you were able to pull out a win here, I mean, that's 2 gutty wins, and I think that can really start going a long way to establishing a team character.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. You can download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Layden on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.